Maintenance. It's unexciting, it's messy, it can be complicated, and it takes time. There are a bunch of reasons to avoid keeping up with your car's maintenance, but if you don't, it's probably gonna bite you in the ass. So today, I'm gonna walk you through the 9 parts of a car that commonly require maintenance or attention. For each, I'll show you what to look for, why we're looking at it, and how to fix it. I'm Zach, and this is Money Pit. So the most common and consistent maintenance item is oil. The engine oil is the lifeblood of your engine, and your car requires transfusions of new blood every so often. Anytime you get metal on metal contact in your engine, the components that are touching are gonna wear very fast. So all your moving parts need to be separated by a thin film of oil at all times to keep your engine in good shape. See how much friction there is there? Now at 7,000 RPMs, that's gonna toast itself pretty quick. But let's put a little oil on it. Oh, no noise at all, because it's riding on a thin film of oil. So that's what you want. Engine oil is comprised of pretty much 2 main components, a base oil and an additive package. Base oil is a product created by refining crude oil from the ground when you're talking about conventional oil, or the base oil is a synthesized polymer when you're talking about a full synthetic oil. A combination of both types of base oil would make for a semi-synthetic or a synthetic blend, which has a quality and price somewhere in between conventional and full synthetic. In either case, the base oil comprises most of what's ultimately in the bottle. The rest is called the additive pack or package, which contains various additives which make it possible for oil to do its super difficult ass job. The oil needs to be thin enough to be able to be quickly pumped throughout the engine on a cold morning startup, but as the oil heats up to the operating temperature of your engine, it also thins out, as most fluids do. That does sound like a pretty hard job. So how? How on earth does it keep from becoming too thin at operating temperature? Enter multi-grade engine oil, also known as multi-viscosity engine oil. Viscosity is just the measurement of a fluid's internal friction, or its resistance to flow. Low viscosity is like water, and high viscosity is like honey. Low viscosity, low number, low resistance to flow. High viscosity, high number, and a high resistance to flow. And whenever you hear anyone talking about weight when they're talking about motor oil, they're talking about viscosity. So anyway, oh sh**.
Oh my God.
Oh no!
Oh my
This has to go.
Oh,
So anyway, multi-viscosity oil. This is actually pretty much every oil you know. Let's take 10W30 for example. 10W-30. We've got a viscosity or weight rating here of 10 with a W, then a dash, and then a viscosity rating of 30. So let's split this thing in half at the dash. These numbers represent the viscosity rating of the oil at 2 different temperatures. The W attached to that first number, that stands for winter, not weight, and it represents winter temperatures, or specifically 0 degrees Fahrenheit. So when cold, this oil flows like a 10 weight oil, which is good. That's a pretty low number, which means it's probably thin enough to get pumped around on a cold start and protect the goods. But then the second number is a measurement of the viscosity of the oil at operating temperature, or 212 degrees Fahrenheit. At 212 degrees, the viscosity of this oil is now a 30 weight. It's still thinner than it was because now it's hot. It's at 212 degrees. But it's not as thin as a straight 10 weight oil would be at 212. So for the multi-viscosity trick, the additive pack has what's called viscosity improvers or modifiers, which expand in size with temperature and effectively increase viscosity. There are also things called dispersants and detergents, which help oil do 2 of its other biggest jobs. Dispersants help catch and suspend combustion byproducts like soot and carbon. And detergents help clean deposits, and they help neutralize acids, which are created by combustion. And at some point, the oil in your engine has trapped all the soot it can hold, and it's neutralized all the acid it can. So it's reasons like these that you need to change your oil. You've probably heard every 3,000 miles on the old odometer or every 3 months, but honestly, it varies quite a bit. Really, you should be able to go 5,000 miles nowadays with no problems. Typically speaking, a synthetic oil will give you the longest drain interval possible when compared to a semi-synthetic or conventional oil. Generally, it's best to stick with your manufacturer's recommendation. You gotta make sure that the oil you're using meets the certifications that your engine requires. So anyways, let's change this freaking oil. First, you're gonna wanna make sure you have the car on a nice flat, level ground. Then you need to make sure it's in park or in gear and the e-brake is pulled. Then you gotta chock the wheel, like that. Then once you got the wheel chocked, you need to find the lift points on your car. There's always gonna be 2 on either side of the car, and on the Miata you can tell where they are by these little indents. But that's where I want our jack stand to go. So I'm actually gonna lift it from the front subframe, which will pick up the front 2 tires at the same time.
What do you call that move?
That's the old scissor kick. Thigh master. And then I'm gonna get the jack stands under the reinforced bit on the pinch welds on either side and slowly lower the car onto the stands. Now we need to lift the rear. I'm gonna do basically the same thing. We're gonna use the same side lift point, just the rear one, and I'm gonna lift the car from the differential. Now that it's up in the air, give it a little shake, make sure it doesn't fall off your jack stands, and if it doesn't, you did it. Good job. So for our sweet little Miata here, we're gonna use a full synthetic. We're gonna use a Mobil 1 10W30, and we're gonna operate on roughly a 5,000 mile oil change interval. But realistically, we're gonna be taking this thing apart so many damn times, I don't know if we'll ever actually get there. First, pop off your oil fill cap. Get underneath the car, drain the old oil. And see how little of a mess you can make. It's always fun. All right, the oil's all drained. Time to put the drain plug back in. I've got my torque wrench. The torque spec is 22 to 30 foot-pounds. I'm gonna go with 30 foot-pounds, try to make sure it doesn't leak. Now the drain plug's back in, I'm gonna yank off the old oil filter, which is right up there, and it'll drain into the pan. It's always a good idea to lube up the new gasket on your new filter. You can use the old engine oil for that, or you can go with the new stuff. Just get it wet, just helps it seal. Just spin it on until it gets snug and then go maybe another half turn or a turn. That's really all it takes. So the oil capacity on the Miata is 4 quarts. So I've got 4 quarts here and we're gonna dump them all in. All right, so now we're gonna start the car so we can check the oil level, and the point of that is just to fill up that dry filter with oil so we get an accurate reading on the level of the oil. Then check your oil level and make sure you don't have any leaks. So we changed our oil, which leaves us with this vat of used, dirty, gross oil. I like to have one of these on hand, take it to your nearest store and drop it off. It's free. All right, that's an oil change. It was pretty easy, right? But what about those other oils? Other oils? What? Yes, we do need to change the gear oil and our diff oil, so let's do it. Now, there's no combustion going on in the trans or diff, so the fluid doesn't get as dirty as your engine oil. And that's part of the reason you can run these fluids so much longer than you run an engine oil. Now, I've got these 2 fluids. This one's for the transmission and this one's for the diff. They're both 75W90. But they are not the same. The fluid for the transmission, this is a GL4 spec fluid, and the diff fluid here is a GL5 spec. Now what does this mean? In this case, it's mostly about the difference in extreme pressure, or EP additive. It adheres to all your metal parts and basically acts like a last line of defense against metal on metal wear. So the difference between these 2 fluids is the level of that EP additive. For our differential, where forces are extraordinarily high and brutal, we're going to use this GL5, this Mobil 1 75W90. We need to be a little bit more delicate in our gearbox, and the amount of EP additive in the GL5 fluid is too aggressive for the synchronizer rings in the Miata's transmission. So this GL4 spec fluid is what's going in the trans. Now that we got all that jibber jabber out of the way, let's talk about actually changing the transmission fluid. Before you open up the drain plug, which obviously you have to do to drain the fluid, you need to open up the fill plug to make sure that you're gonna be able to put new fluid back in it once you drain out the old fluid. Then you remove the drain plug, drain all the old juice out, put the drain plug back in, tighten it up, and then you'll just fill with new fluid until it comes out the fill hole. To get the fluid into the transmission, I've got this. It's a little fluid transfer pump. It just goes down in there, you just squirt it like a little soap dispenser, and it puts the fluid where you want it. She's full. There you go. See how it's running out of the fill plug like that? That's how you know when it's filled up. So we're ready to put our fill plug back in. The transmission is done. Now we need to do the diff. We're gonna pop off the fill plug to make sure it comes off. Then we'll drain it. And again, as we're draining our fluid, we're looking at it and making sure it looks good. And it does. There's no dirt or foreign debris in there. So that's a good sign. Put the drain plug back in, fill it up with fluid. So same thing with the transmission. We're just gonna pour the fluid into the fill hole until it spills out, then we know it's full. Where's my plug? Oh no. You gotta keep track of your plugs. Hey, Yahtzee. For the drain plug, the spec is 29 to 40 foot-pounds. So if you're new to doing this kind of stuff, you should absolutely use a torque wrench and do it to spec so you get to learn. And that's how you change your diff fluid. Pretty easy, right? Let's do some brakes. Brake fluid is a type of hydraulic fluid that your brake system uses in order for your car to stop when you want it to. When you step on your brakes, the fluid causes a piston or pistons in your brake caliper to push against your brake pads. The pads then clamp against the rotors, and those are attached to your wheels. Now, brake fluid, like all the other fluids we talked about before, needs to be changed. It absorbs water. It's what's called a hygroscopic fluid. So now if you're thinking, well, water is fluid that's also incompressible, so why would it matter if water gets into the system? Well, so as you use your brakes, you create a lot of heat and your fluid gets hot. And if it gets too hot, it'll cause that unwanted water in the brake fluid to boil, because water has a much lower boiling point than any brake fluid. And when you boil water, it becomes a gas. And gas is very compressible. So when that happens, you lose the function of your brakes pretty much completely, which is also known as being completely. So it's important to check with your car's manual to see which fluid your system takes. So I want to make sure we use the best fluid possible now so we don't have to deal with it in the future. So that's why we're using Motool's RBF 600. It's got a dry boiling point of 594 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a full 148 degrees more braking temp than you get with a standard .4 stuff. Brake bleeding is the name of the process where you purge air bubbles from the brake lines. When the brake fluid heats up past the boiling point of that water, it creates steam in the lines. The steam creates air pockets in the brake lines, and then that reduces the amount of hydraulic pressure when you hit the brake pedals. So a common symptom of air in your brake lines is a soft or spongy pedal. The only way to get that air out is to bleed the fluid and air bubbles out. So Eddie's gonna get in the car and he's gonna pump up the brake pedal to get some pressure in the system. Then he's gonna hold the pedal down to keep all that pressure on the fluid in the system. Then I'll crack open the bleeder valve at each individual brake, and fluid and or air will come out of the bleeder as Eddie's foot sinks to the floor. Then I'll close the bleeder and Eddie can pump the pedal up again, and then we'll repeat that cycle until we've flushed out all the old fluid. So as we do this, we have to make sure to keep filling the brake reservoir with new fluid so you don't suck air in from the reservoir. This is where communication with your homies is key. Now Eddie, pump it up. So we got this corner done. We got to do it on 3 other corners. So let's get at it. Pump it. Okay, how's the pedal feel?
Feels great.
Well, that's a brake bleed, my boy. So as we know, car engines create a lot of heat. And to keep things from melting down, your engine has coolant coursing through its aluminum and or steel veins. Engine coolant is pumped through the engine where it absorbs heat from the block, and then the fluid gets transferred to the radiator here at the front. Air flows through the radiator across the veins and pulls heat out of the coolant. And then the coolant goes back to the block and it starts the process all over again. So what exactly is engine coolant? Well, it is a mixture of water and antifreeze. You know what water is, I hope. And antifreeze is either ethylene glycol or propylene glycol, depending on what formula you buy. Those chemicals, when mixed with water, do exactly what the name suggests. They prevent freezing. Over time, the coolant in your engine can become slightly acidic, and that slightly acidic solution in your engine causes corrosion, which is bad. Beyond that, your coolant can lose its ability to keep from freezing when it gets really cold, and you can't really tell just by looking at it. So you need one of these. This is called a hydrometer. Basically, you just suck some coolant up into it, and it floats this little float and points at a number here and tells you roughly what temperature your antifreeze is good to. Just under -34 Fahrenheit, so that's pretty good. So our coolant's pretty cool. Let's take a look at our power steering. So power steering fluid, much like brake fluid, is a type of hydraulic fluid, and in this case it's used to transmit power to your steering system. So the power steering pump pulls fluid from our reservoir right here, pumps it, puts some pressure on it, and forces it into your steering rack, which is what gives you the power. So power steering fluid, just like all our other fluids, over time gets dirty and needs to be replaced. But you also might notice if you're having power steering issues, like if there's a squeal when you try to turn the wheel, or if it's really hard to turn the wheel at slow speeds, or if it's jerky and not consistent. All of those can be signs of a failing pump or low on fluid, or even potentially just a loose belt that isn't driving your power steering pump. So, dipstick, it's full of fluid and the fluid looks okay. It looks nice and clear. There's not any chunks of junk in it. The power steering system in the Miata seems to be fine, so I'm really not gonna do much to it today. I'm gonna turkey baster out some of the old fluid, fill up with new, fresh Mobil 1 ATF, check our level. We gotta use our little dipstick and try to land somewhere on that little middle part there. All right, so power steering fluid is at the right level. Got some fresh juice in there, which is good. And I'll do that the next couple times I work on the car, and then it'll just be kind of a nice, easy background way to kind of cycle some new power steering fluid in there. Let's do some spark plugs. Spark plugs are responsible for creating the spark that ignites the air and fuel mixture that's in your engine. So this is your positive terminal, which you'll connect your coil pack or your spark plug wire to the top there, and then electricity travels through the center electrode all the way to the tip where it gets to the gap. And with enough voltage, the electricity will jump this little gap, and that's your spark. So that's how it does the sparky part of its job, but spark plugs have another job. They need to dissipate the correct amount of heat. The heat range rating of a spark plug is the measurement of how much heat the plug can transfer from the tip of the spark plug to the cylinder head and ultimately to the cooling system of your engine. So you need to use a plug that operates in its most efficient temperature range. As you put miles on your plugs, they are subjected to a pretty insane environment. And as the miles rack up, the tip of your electrode will wear away until it's no longer effective at creating a spark. Now, depending on the durability of materials used in the plugs you choose, will have a lot to do with how long they last. For example, a copper plug is going to wear the quickest and have the shortest lifespan at 10 to 30,000 miles depending on how you drive. They're also the cheapest. Plugs with iridium or platinum tips are much more durable and they can last up to like 100,000 miles, but they are more expensive. So you can tell if you need to change your spark plugs if they start misfiring, which feels a lot like walking up some stairs and trying to take that last step that isn't there. Let's take a look at our plugs and see how things are going inside the engine. All right, so we're getting ready to pull out our spark plugs. I've got my handy dandy spark plug socket here. It's a 5/8 in size because spark plugs are often still a standard size. It's got a magnet in the tip, which makes it easy for pulling them out and putting them back in. All right, so here's our first plug. No oil on the thread, so no leaks. We've got like a kind of nice, light, grayish, tannish looking strap there. Our electrode's nice and square still, doesn't look very eroded. There's no deposits. These look pretty good. Well, at least the first one does. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Plug number 2 looks equally good. Now number 4. And this is the cylinder that tends to get hot, isn't it, Eddie?
Sure is.
Threads are clean. Tip looks good. Pretty dry. Electrode looks good. Our plugs look fine, but we already have a new set of plugs, so we're gonna install them anyway. It's always a good idea to check the gap of your plugs, even if they are pre-gapped. To do that, we've got a little gapper tool here. All you're doing is measuring the air gap between the tip of the electrode and the ground strap on the spark plug. So we're gonna check and make sure that all 4 plugs are gapped the same, and then we'll install them. This one's a little bit tighter at 0.04, so I'll show you how to open up the ground strap. It's really easy. So you just get it in there like that, give it a little push. There we go, perfect. So I'll put a little bit of dielectric grease on the porcelain here, and that'll help the spark plug boot seal to the spark plug and help prevent misfires. We're gonna do 22 foot-pounds on the spark plugs. And that's it, baby, new spark plugs. How exciting. You know what it is. We've got to take off that intake, son, so we can get to them belts. All right, so your engine uses a belt or a couple of belts to operate various different systems attached to the engine, like your water pump, your power steering pump, your alternator. They're all driven by the crank, so if the car is running, the crank's spinning and it's spinning your accessory pumps and components. They're made out of rubber just like tires, so over time, with a lot of use, they'll wear down and they lose their ability to do their job well. They look okay, they're not cracked, they don't look too worn, but we're still gonna stick some new ones on there. So in order to install some new belts, all you need to do is loosen your tensioner or tensioners, which changes the tension on the belt. So we loosen the bolts on the power steering pump and we loosen the tensioner. That allows the power steering pump itself to pivot down, which loosens the belt. So now I've got a really loose belt and I'm gonna take it off. There's belt number 1. Let's get the second one off. Okay, so this one's a little tougher to get to, it looks like. Okay, now you can see the alternator moving. So that's loose, we should be able to get that belt off now. So So we've got these grooves here, or the teeth of the belt. There's no cracking, which is good. This doesn't look exceptionally worn. You want to look at the sides too, see if there's any kind of melting going on or anything like that. It looks okay, but again, these are so cheap that I'm replacing it because I want to know it's okay. So up onto the water pump, down onto the crankshaft. Then we just got to get it onto the alternator, which is also the tensioner. All right, so the first belt is on. We've got it tensioned. It's pretty tight, just the way we want it. And now we're gonna tighten up our alternator, and then we'll put on our second belt. Okay, now that belt's on. We need to get a little tension on her. That's about good. That's the tension we want. The spec is 11.5 millimeters, which is close to 1/2 inch. And I'd say that's just under 1/2 inch of play up and down. So that's great. We'll tighten up our tensioner and then our belts are done. It's time for filters after that. All right, folks, I know we've been at it for a while, but we're almost there. The last thing we have to do before this Miata is up to snuff is install some new filters. We're gonna do an air filter and a fuel filter. The air filter lets air through, but it traps all the dirt and debris and all the nasty stuff that you don't want your engine to suck up. And just like all filters, at a certain point, it can't do its job very well anymore because it's full of junk. All right, to get to the air filter, it's gonna be really easy, especially because we already have our front part of the intake off. So now I'm just gonna disconnect our mass airflow sensor. Aww,
You break that?
the clip broke. Well, now I just have 4 screws left, either 10 millimeters or Phillips, and then the top of the intake box will come off. Hey, it doesn't look too bad so far. So here's an air filter. This is a paper filter. There are also cotton filters, and there are cool foam ones, but they all do the same job, which is trapping junk. And honestly, so far, this one looks pretty good. But again, I've got a new one anyway because we're zeroing this puppy out. Looks like the filter that was already in there, just a little newer. Drop the filter in, put the lid back on, screws back in, and you're done. Well, there's no satisfying click there anymore.
Whose fault is that?
Dude, it's mine, okay? So the last step here is to put this intake tube back in place just the way it came off. Should be pretty easy, and then we're done up here. All right, now we're down here under the car getting ready to replace the fuel filter. Over time, it filters out a bunch of gunk and it can get blocked up, which can cause poor idle, poor fuel economy, and just poor performance overall. So we're gonna spill a little bit of fuel here, but the car hasn't been on since yesterday, so we shouldn't really have much fuel pressure in the system. But if you do, the best thing you can do is take out your fuel pump fuse and then start the car, and it'll run until it runs out of fuel, and that'll depressurize your fuel system so you can work on it. All right, so here's our old fuel filter. Now I'm gonna pinch this line right here to try to stop from losing as much fuel as possible, and then we'll pop it off. Take out the first line, loosen up the hose. Might as well pinch off the upper line as well. That should do. Sometimes your old hoses will get really stuck on stuff, so you gotta kind of loosen them up. Here we go. Can't get that up. You got the old one out? It's time to put the new one in. Brand new fuel filter. Dang, this thing got a lot of love today. Let's bring this thing down. She's back. Now let's torque them wheels. All right, so the torque spec for the wheels seems to be 65 to 87 foot-pounds, which is a pretty wide spread. I'm gonna go with 75 foot-pounds, and we'll see if the wheels come off. And that's it. That's maintenance on a Miata. Let's take it for a drive, make sure everything feels good. The car feels great. What do you know? It honestly feels a lot like it did at the beginning of this, but now I feel a lot better knowing that the car has fresh fluids, fresh filters, fresh belts, and fresh spark plugs. So the car is at a great baseline now to start modifying it. So check back next week when we replace those worn out tires. We'll put some new sticky ones on it. We'll talk about tires, we'll talk about wheels, how to get your fitment right, and you guys are never gonna guess what wheels we bought. So check us next week for that. In the meantime, follow me on Instagram at Zach Jobe, follow Donut at Donut Media, follow our new YouTube channel for our podcast, Donut Podcasts, and thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're having fun. We're having a blast making this show. See you next week.